3 spine-chilling true horror stories from haunted rainy nights, unexplained terror revealed. The rain hammered against the roof like a dozen fingers drumming on a metal drum, relentless and angry. All of Millfield seemed to be swallowed by the storm, but inside Sarah's small home, a different kind of dread clung to the air. She had just returned from the diner, her clothes still carrying the stench of grease, but as soon as she stepped through the door, an unusual chill enveloped her. Ethan, her teenage son, sat hunched on the couch, his face pale beneath the flickering light of the ever-dimming lamp. "Mom, we're not alone," he whispered, something primal in his tone, his usual bravado stripped away. Sarah chuckled nervously at his antics. The wind howled outside, the noise blending seamlessly with the low growls of thunder. "Just the storm, Ethan," she assured, her voice a bit higher than normal, betraying her own escalating anxiety. But as she glanced around, the damp shadows of their home began to twist, their shapes blurred, immaterial whispers just out of reach. The front door had been locked tight, but now it swung ever so slightly open, barely perceivable. A shiver crawled down Sarah's spine. She tried to push the feeling away, rationality fighting against creeping fear, but every creak of the house felt like an angry warning. She took a step forward, heart pounding in rhythm with the thunder, and before she could blink, the lights flickered again. "Ethan," she called out, but he had slipped into a trance, eyes darting towards the windows. "There's something out there." Biting her lip, Sarah focused on the pounding rain, yet something sharp tinged the silence that followed. Then, a soft scratching noise scraped against the wall. It wasn't the sound of nature, it was deliberate. The pit of her stomach twisted. She wanted to believe it was an animal just out of sight, but Millfield had its share of stories, strange happenings shrouded in darkness, whispers of a haunting rain that drove men mad. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As thunder clashed with a deafening roar, Sarah felt the weight of an unseen presence urging her to flee. The air felt thick, pressurized, stifling. Their neighbor, Mr. Hargrove, haunted the edges of her mind, lurking in the shadows between rain and darkness, a friendly face hiding sinister intent. She had seen him a few hours ago, eyes glinting in the downpour, but there was something unsettling in his lingering stare. The lights finally succumbed, plunging them into a void. Moments passed, as still as the oppressive silence. Goosebumps erupted on Sarah's arms. She gripped Ethan's wrist tight, fingers trembling. A thud echoed across the house, heavy and deliberate. Tension surged through Sarah. Anxiety consumed her thoughts, fighting the urge to bolt into the rain. The foundation creaked, an ominous warning that their small world now morphed into a terrifying labyrinth. Her heart raced as shadows pulsated around the corners of her vision, threatening to engulf them whole. The clock ticked ominously, each second stretching longer than the last. Was something creeping closer? An angry wind swept through, rattling the windows and bringing forth the folklore that haunted their town. As they huddled together, Sarah realized, the darkness outside was only a reflection of the terror now rising from the depths of their reality. What lay hidden in those flickering shadows was no simple storm, it was something far more sinister. Just then, the scratching returned, more insistent, ending in a hollow thud. It echoed through her mind, paralyzing her with dread as she instinctively turned toward the source. Fear took root in her heart as she faced the unknown. What was lurking close by, waiting to be exposed in the cruel light of dawn? The weight of terror settled on her chest as she stepped closer to the line between safety and the abyss. The scratching intensified, clawing at the wooden wall like restless spirits desperate to be freed. Sarah felt her heartbeat echo in her ears, each thump a reminder of the life thrumming within her, stark against the impending doom cloaked in shadows. She glanced at Ethan, whose eyes were wide with terror. "Mom, we need to get out of here," he insisted, but his voice quivered, betraying his resolve. Sarah shook her head, panic swirling within her. No door was a guarantee, not with whatever prowled their home. "Stay quiet," she whispered, her voice trembling as she tiptoed toward the sound. Each step felt heavier than the last, her feet sinking into the plush carpet as if it were quicksand, drawing her deeper into a pool of dread. She squinted into the darkness, hoping for some sign, a flicker of light, a shadow moving in the distance. But nothing, just silence. And that damned scratching. Suddenly, a crash erupted against the window, shattering the stillness like glass splintering into a million shards. Sarah screamed, instinctively pulling Ethan close as she backed away from the menacing sound. Rain poured down the panes, dark streaks weaving wildly, and through the blurry haze, a fleeting figure darted past, too fast to decipher. It was gone before she could even discern a face. "What was that?" Ethan exclaimed, his voice a mixture of fear and disbelief, gripping her hand tightly. "I don't know," she said, searching for a semblance of courage. "But it can't get in." She was lying. They both knew it. A cold wind sliced through the house, chilling Sarah's bones. It whispered secrets she didn't want to hear, taunting her to surrender to the madness creeping in. The lamps flickered again, dimming to almost complete darkness, and just as she feared they might be swallowed whole, a light appeared, a flashlight beam cut through the shadows. "Sarah!" "Ethan!" Mr. Hargrove's voice echoed from outside, glib and eerie. He sounded too cheerful for this menacing storm, as if he weren't standing in the rain while a haunted evil suppressed the town. "Can you hear me?" he shouted, the light scanning the perimeter, searching for something or someone. "Stay back!" Sarah yelled, heart racing. She and Ethan retreated into the deeper shadows of the house, hoping to remain unseen. The last thing they needed now was Mr. Hargrove's probing gaze. They didn't know if he could be trusted. Who could? In a place like Millfield, she could hear him moving around the yard, singing an unsettling tune, his joyful intonations contrasting harshly with the chaos brewing just beneath the surface. The scratching at the wall returned, louder this time, more aggressive. Panic ignited in her chest as she turned back toward the source. Something was trying to come through. The scratching morphed into a dull thudding, rhythmic and relentless, like footsteps of whatever was trapped behind the walls, waiting. "Mom!" Ethan gasped, the sheer terror in his voice striking her hard, like a kick to the gut. "What if it gets in? What if it gets us?" Just then, the door swung open, a gust of wind forced through, and for a moment, everything fell still. "Sarah? Ethan? Where are you?" The flashlight beam landed on the living room floor as Hargrove stepped inside, soaked to the bone, eyes wide with an unsettling gleam. But his voice, it was wrong, tinged with a devilish undertone. "What are you hiding from?" he said, taking a slow step forward. And then the thudding got louder, more frantic, as if whatever it was behind the walls was desperate for release. Sarah could only shove Ethan back further, instinct taking over. The terror had escalated to a point of no return. With nowhere to escape, they now faced the undisguised horror lurking in the depths of their home. But what, or who, would reveal itself first? Sarah's breath hitched as fear wrapped around her neck. They needed to make a choice. Safety or truth. But were they prepared for the consequences? As the walls trembled, the ground beneath them shuddered with a foreboding intensity. What would haunt them more? What waited to get in, or what waited to be exposed? The air thickened with tension as Mr. Hargrove's flashlight beam sliced through the darkness, illuminating his rain-soaked features. He looked almost unnatural, a grotesque caricature of a friend, with a smile that felt more like a mask than a gesture of reassurance. "Come on out," he beckoned softly, but there was an edge to his voice, a whip of malice that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. "I can help you." "Help?" Sarah scoffed, heart hammering louder than her defiance. "You don't know what's happening here." The walls shuddered again, the dull thud escalating, as if what was inside had taken offense to Mr. Hargrove's presence. Ethan whimpered, pressing himself into the shadows. Sarah could barely breathe. She moved toward the nearest window, attempting to gauge the outside world, but all she saw was the furious rain and the looming branches clawing at the glass like skeletal hands. "Stay back," she commanded Hargrove, her voice trembling as it battled against rising hysteria. But he took another step forward. There was a flicker of something. Was it desperation or hunger? In his eyes. "You don't want to know what's inside. Just let it be." He lowered his voice, almost conspiratorial. "I can protect you. You just have to trust me." But his words twisted in her stomach like a viper. What could he know about the terror that seeped through the walls? The scratching intensified a clawing panic that echoed the rhythm of her own racing heart. "Mom!" Ethan whispered hoarsely, his eyes darting toward the other side of the room. "What if it can smell us?" A cold draft swept through the room, making Sarah shudder. The shadows in the corners seemed to stretch, reaching out like tendrils searching for warmth. "Then we can't stay here," she said, almost breathless. They needed to get out, but where? The front door or whatever else lurked behind the walls. "Please, just listen to me. You don't want to be here when it." Hargrove started, but he was cut off. A loud crash erupted from the basement below, followed by frantic scratching that sent a wave of terror crashing over Sarah. Whatever it was alive and ferocious. "Mom, we need to go. Now." Ethan's voice broke through the chaos. Instinct kicked in, and Sarah grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the nearest exit. But the door to the basement was flung open, revealing only darkness framed by dim light. Before she could think, before reason could stop her, Ethan broke away from her grasp and sprinted toward the basement stairs, drawn by some unseen force. "No! Ethan!" She lunged after him, but he was already disappearing into the black void below. Heart pounding, dread clawing at her throat, Sarah followed, her breath coming in short gasps. The air was stale as she descended, every step into the basement signaling a plunge into the unknown. And then, silence. No scratching, no thudding, just a quiet that screamed. "Ethan?" she called, her voice shaking. "Where are you?" A faint whisper danced around her, like a mocking echo of her own fear. Then, out of the darkness, familiar laughter, faint, soft, reached her ears. Sarah froze. That sound was wrong. It was not Ethan's. It felt malevolent, taunting. "Ethan," she whimpered, dread prickling her skin. But as she moved deeper into the murky shadows, she felt every cell in her body tense. Something shifted behind her, a presence creeping closer. When she turned, it was not Hargrove or her son who loomed over her. A figure emerged, dark and featureless, with glowing eyes that pierced through the gloom. She was not prepared for this. What had she unknowingly unleashed? The walls trembled once more, and the endless scratching returned, furious and primal. Then a voice, cold and unforgiving, emitted from the dark figure. "Now you've let it in." Sarah's heart plummeted with realization. The truth was at hand. But could they survive it? And in that chilling moment, the noise rose again. It wasn't the scratching anymore. It was laughter. The laughter echoed, bouncing off the damp walls, fueling Sarah's terror. It was like a malicious wind, swirling around her, wrapping her in shadows. The dark figure loomed, its glowing eyes tracking her every movement, and an overwhelming urge to flee surged within her. "Ethan!" she screamed, her voice cracking. But the basement only absorbed her cries. The mocking laughter increased in intensity, like a carnival of horrors relishing her despair. She stumbled backward, her foot catching on the uneven floor, sending her crashing into a stack of forgotten boxes. Debris scattered, clattering to the ground. A broken mirror reflected a distorted version of her, eyes wide with fear, hair wild and soaked. She scrambled to her feet, sweeping her gaze across the basement for any sign of her son. The laughter fell silent, bringing an eerie calm, but it was a false peace. From the corner of her eye, she spotted movement, something shifting in the shadows near the far wall. Heart racing, she edged closer, straining to make out the figure. As she drew nearer, the dim light revealed a small shape on the floor. Ethan's toy truck lay abandoned, wheels spinning idly. Her stomach turned. No! Panic surged as she darted toward it, her breath hitching. Ethan! Desperation clawed at her vocal cords. Shadows danced around her, darkness inviting her to join it. Another crash resonated above her, back in the house. Time felt lost, but the instinct for survival kicked in again. Someone was in the house. No, something. Ethan. She turned, ready to sprint back toward the stairs, but the dark figure was now closer, its glowing eyes watched her, unblinking and unyielding. Leave, it whispered, voice like rusted metal scraping on glass, dripping with venom. The air thickened with its demand, weighing down her resolve. No. I want to leave without him. The shadows grew darker, more oppressive. Familiar whispers slithered around her, sounding like her son's voice, echoing from the void. Mom, help me. Ethan. It was unmistakably him. It tugged at her heart like a lifeline, but she couldn't tell where the sound was coming from. Was it a trap? Or was he close, calling for her? Turning her back on the figure, she shouted his name once more, desperation bubbling over. Ethan. I'm coming. With every step toward the cries, the walls shifted, groaning as if the house itself resentfully shifted, demanding she stay. She pressed forward, ignoring the dark presence, her pulse roaring in her ears. Mom, please. The voice was nearer now, filled with a vibration of urgency that sent her tumbling toward its source, but before she could reach it, a rush of cold air slammed into her, and a chorus of laughter exploded around her once more. The walls shook violently, and suddenly, the cries faded into silence. Ethan's voice was gone. As the laughter crescendoed, Sarah felt the ground beneath her tremble, the weight of the unseen closing in around her. She was being enveloped by darkness, the figure looming ever closer. Let me take your place, it said, and its voice was now unsettlingly sweet, like honey dripping with poison. Terror erupted within her. She was losing everything. Get away from me. She shrieked, but the darkness tightened, squeezing the air from her lungs. Then, abruptly, the figure vanished, leaving Sarah alone in the suffocating silence of the basement, exhaustion weighing down every part of her. She turned back toward the stairs, knees shaking. Ethan? She called weakly, hope flickering like a dying candle. Above, the house quieted. Only the sound of her ragged breath filled the space, as dread leached into her chest. She was utterly alone, but then, a soft whisper, slithering through the darkness, chilled her to the bone. You should have listened. Racing back up the stairs, a new gnawing fear took root in her veins. What if she had lost everything? The question lingered as she reached the door, trembling hand poised on the handle. What awaited her beyond this door? And more importantly, where was Ethan now? The door creaked open, splintering the silence. Sarah's heart raced as she stepped into the dimly lit hallway, each breath a tremor clawing at her throat. Ethan? She whispered, but the only reply was the echo of her own voice. It danced along the walls, whispering back to her, a mocking rendition of her fear. The house felt alive. Shadows crept along the edges of the walls, stretching menacingly as if trying to reach out for her. She hurried toward the living room, the familiar layout distorted by creeping dread. Furniture loomed like spectral figures, their shapes warped by her panic. Ethan. Her voice cracked, desperate and raw. A fleeting image of his face flashed in her mind, his innocent smile turned upside down by the haunting reality of his absence. Her stomach twisted again with a mix of fear and a mother's instinct to protect. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted, a chill that snaked through her body, raising goosebumps on her arms. It was accompanied by a whisper, barely audible yet undeniably present. Sarah, she froze, her breath catching. Her name rolled from the shadows like a tangible thing, thick with malice. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling, as she scanned the room. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. Something was watching her. The fireplace flickered to life, the flames dancing wickedly, casting flickering shadows across the walls. In the light, shapes twisted unnaturally, faces, eyes, hands, all forming in the dark corners. They sneered at her helplessness. With renewed dread, she turned back to the hallway, feeling a pull from the upstairs. The children's room. She had to check there. A gripping uncertainty filled her. The longing to find Ethan battled with the gnawing fear of what lurked within those walls. As she ascended the staircase, each step groaned under the weight of her fear. The whispers continued, an unsettling song echoing around her. Join us, her legs trembled when she reached the door of Ethan's room. Darkness lingered just beyond it, thick and suffocating. She hesitated, heart drumming like wild thunder in her chest. "Ethan!" she shouted one last time, voice shaking with desperation. Slowly, she turned the handle, wincing at the screech of the door opening. The room was awash in shadows. Toys lay scattered, but where was her son? The bed was unmade. Stale air wrapped around her, cloaking her in dread. Then, a sudden scraping sound broke the stillness, a chair sliding across the floor. Panic surged within her as she stepped into the room. "Ethan!" she cried again, voice strained. The chair settled back into place, almost too deliberately. Then, in the corner of her eye, something shifted. Sarah turned swiftly, her pulse racing. A shadow curled at the foot of the bed, a dark, undulating mass. Her breath caught as she moved toward it, drawn by an instinct she didn't understand. "Mom!" A small voice, barely above a whisper, echoed in the silence. Her heart sank. Was it Ethan? Was he under there? When she reached out, the shadow reared back, morphing into a different form, a face she recognized, pale, otherworldly with hollowed eyes. It smiled at her, luminescent and eerie, a sinister reflection of Ethan's innocence. "Leave the boy, he's mine now," it hissed, each word slicing through the air. "No!" Sarah shouted in defiance, shaking with rage and fear. The thing grinned wider, revealing teeth too sharp, too unnatural. But as the shadows lunged, enveloping her like a predator claiming its prey, Sarah couldn't escape the gut-wrenching realization gnawing at her: she could lose him forever. "Ethan!" she screamed, the name bursting from her in despair as the darkness swallowed her whole. And then, silence fell, leaving no trace of her presence, only the echoes of scornful laughter that danced maliciously through the house. Outside, the winds picked up, screeching in a haunting chorus. What nightmares awaited in the shadows of the night? In the depths of darkness, another voice whispered, "Just wait till morning." In the chilling hush that followed Sarah's scream, the house breathed, swelling with an unknown power that coiled around its dark corners. The darkness faded, dropping its grip on Sarah as if it was not done with her yet. She found herself staring back at the room, still filled with the remnants of flickering shadows. "Ethan?" she rasped, her voice barely more than a whisper. She could feel the cold sweat trickling down her back as her heart pounded an erratic rhythm. The echo of her call swallowed by the silence only amplified her isolation. With a sudden surge of determination, she fought against the icy dread pooling in her stomach. She bolted out of the room, her footsteps a frantic blur down the hall. The laughter didn't stop, it lingered as though the house itself found amusement in Sarah's pain. "Ethan!" she called, but it came out choked, strained. Each syllable clawed its way from her throat. The kitchen felt wrong. Pots hung unceremoniously from the hooks, their metallic bodies glistening in the dim light like eyes watching her. The shadows here twisted ominously, as if ready to pounce. She glanced towards the window, the moon a haunting specter above, casting spectral light through the cracks. "Mom!" The voice floated to her once more, coming from below. The basement. The realization struck her hard, like a punch in the gut. Ethan could be down there, but so too could the thing that had replaced him. Despite the tremors in her hands, she knew she had to check. Maybe the real Ethan was trapped somewhere deep inside, waiting for her to rescue him. Taking a deep breath, she descended the creaky staircase, each step an agonizing reminder of the eeriness surrounding her. The air grew thick, heavy, almost suffocating, reverberating with an otherworldly chill as she reached the bottom. The basement enveloped her in darkness that felt alive, pulsating like a beating heart. "Ethan?" She tried to steady her voice, but the tremor returned. "Where are you?" Nothing but silence answered her. The light bulb flickered overhead, casting weak illumination on the damp walls that seemed to close in on her. Sarah pressed onward, her feet heavy but resolute. Then she heard the soft, rhythmic thump of something against the wall, echoing. "Mom, help please." His voice was muffled, like a distant cry for help drowning in the depths below. Each plea twisted in her heart like a knife, urging her forward even faster. She followed the sound, her pulse quickening, chest tightening with fear and desperation. As she approached the far corner of the basement, she spotted a small half-open door nestled against the floor. A shiver ran down her spine. A sense of dread washed over her, warning her of the looming danger. She knelt down, fear gnashing at her heart, her hand trembling as she reached for the handle. It felt strange, cold and unnatural, pulsing under her touch. "Ethan!" She shouted, willing him to respond, to give her some sort of sign, a glimmer of hope. "I'm coming. Hold on." The thumping grew frantic, echoing off the walls like a heartbeat racing. But just then, the laughter returned, wrapping around her like a shroud, sending icy fingers dancing along her spine. It was louder now, mocking her, filling the air with a sense of urgency mixed with despair. "Join us, join him," it whispered, circling her thoughts, bringing with it a waft of putrid air. Summoning all her courage, Sarah threw open the door. "Ethan!" The basement plunged deeper into darkness beyond the threshold, mystery swirling like fog. She stepped inside, the air thick with dread, and felt the unmistakable presence of something else. What awaited her there? What lay hidden behind the veil of shadows, eager to reveal its cruel intentions? And suddenly the grip of the door slammed behind her, sealing fate. Where had Ethan gone? And what would she find in the depths of that darkened abyss? The darkness enveloped Sarah like a shroud, heavy and thick, pressing down on her shoulders. Inside the small room, the air held a stench that clawed at her throat, a blend of mildew and something far worse. She squinted into the black, desperately hoping to catch a glimpse of Ethan. The laughter echoed again, softer this time, more sinister. "Join us, join him." The words crawled into her ears, dragging her resolve down into the depths of despair. "Ethan," she shouted, her voice breaking, desperation slicing through the fear. She could feel the weight of silence pressing back, taunting her. The darkness seemed to pulse, alive and aware, as if it recognized her presence. She took a tentative step forward, the floor beneath her crackling with debris. Shadows danced at the edges of her vision, flickering with a mind of their own. Heart racing, she fumbled her way deeper into the room, straining to hear her son's voice above the sinister laughter. "Mom, over here." His voice was clearer now, a piercing plea cutting through the void. From the darkness, a figure emerged, small and hunched. Panic surged through her, but she fought against it, thrilled by the sound of her child's voice. "Ethan? Is that you?" The figure turned, revealing a thin silhouette, too twisted. The face, her son's face, was marred by a grotesque grin that split too wide, too unsettling. "Mom," it rasped, but the voice was wrong, deeper, distorted. "Help me." Sarah's stomach lurched. "You're not him." She stumbled back, fear dragging her further into the shadows. "Yes, I am," it replied, laughter spilling from its lips like venom. The shadows flickered and swirled around it, a gnarled fist clenching around her heart with each moment she stayed in the room. "No!" she screamed, spinning on her heel to escape. The door, it must be her exit. But as she ran, the room morphed around her, shifting and twisting into a labyrinth of darkness. White-hot panic sparked in her veins. "Mom, don't leave!" The voice echoed once more, but it was wrapped in a sickening sweetness that sent chills racing down her spine. She pressed onward, fumbling through the dense blackness, fingers reaching for the door that had sealed her in. The laughter grew louder, the shadows now swirling with frenetic energy, swirling and reaching, grasping at her legs like desperate hands. Just when she thought she was close, when hope soared to break through the constricting grip of fear, a hand shot from the dark, icy and clutching. It snatched her wrist, sending a shock through her body. "Stay, join us," the whisper slithered across her skin as icy fingers curled tighter. She jerked away, panic flooding every thought, her heart thundering in terror. With one final surge, she wrenched free and burst toward the door she'd come through. The handle turned, she pushed it open and was met with an unsettling sight. The basement lay empty, the walls breathing a sigh of relief. But it was not the same basement she remembered. Molded wood warped into grotesque angles, the air now stale and stagnant. Shadows flickered ominously, whispering dark promises. "Ethan!" she cried into the void behind her, but the only reply was the haunting echo of her voice bouncing back like a ghostly taunt. And then, a rustle, a small, frantic movement near the far wall. It caught her eye and she froze, breath hitching in her throat. A figure, shrouded in gloom, stepped forward, arms outstretched. Was it Ethan? No, the darkness flickered, cloaking its features. "You shouldn't have come back," the laughter returned, louder and more taunting than ever. And just as it began to crescendo, the earth seemed to shake beneath her feet. The walls quivered, shadows leaping toward her like vengeful spirits. Her heart dropped as the figure blurred then charged. In that instant, Sarah realized she might never escape. The truth loomed just beyond her comprehension. What awaited her in this twisted space? "Mom!" A voice, this time unrecognizable, drifted impossibly close. Where was Ethan? What had she brought upon herself? With nowhere to run, dread filled the air, thick as smoke. The terrifying truth hovered just beyond her reach, ready to unfold. What would she discover next, trapped in the clutches of despair? Sarah's breath quickened as the figure surged toward her, its features still obscured by shadows. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet felt glued to the warped floor. Panic clawed at her throat as she realized the shadows were no mere tricks of light, they were watchful entities, hungry and eager. "Mom!" The voice called again, but this time it dripped with something darker, a mocking resonance that chilled her to the core. "Join us, you have to join him." The floor quaked beneath her, a tremor of dread that sent vibrations through her legs. She turned, trying to find the door she had just exited. The familiar doorway had morphed, its edges blurring and merging with the wall. The basement was a living entity, wrapping around her. "Ethan!" she gasped, frustration and despair fueling her cries. "I'm here. I want to leave you." The distortion of the figure seemed to pause, lingering on the name she had called. "Ethan, she calls for you." It cackled, and the sound echoed ominously, like 1,000 voices caught in a storm. Just as fear threatened to consume her, the shadows danced, revealing glimpses of grotesque faces that twisted in the dim light, faces that wrinkled in malicious glee. The laughter swelled, filling the basement, wrapping around her like a noose. She spun around, trying to shake off the dread, eyes wide, searching. "Please! Where are you?" And then she saw it. A flicker of light near the far wall, a small, fragile glow, like the faint heartbeat of hope. Maybe it was a way out. Ignoring the malignant whispers, she moved toward it, drawing in a desperate breath as she felt the warmth of the light brush against her skin, but still, the shadows clawed at her ankles, tugging her back, their cries blending into a dissonant symphony. "Stay, stay with us," they crooned sweetly, no longer veiled in malice, but instead enveloped in an eerie allure, as if the darkness itself was calling her home. "Ethan." Her voice came out as a choked whisper. And then she saw him, standing just beyond the light. Her heart twisted with a mix of relief and dread, a small figure against the backdrop of encroaching horror. "Mom." His voice was pure, innocent, and it cut through the chaos like a knife. "Ethan." Relief surged through Sarah. She bolted towards him, but the moment she reached for him, he faded into shadows, leaving only a hollow echo, "Help me no." Her scream fractured the air, punctuated by the growing cacophony of laughter. "I won't leave you." She pushed again toward the glow, desperate to bridge the gap. With every step, the realization struck her: Ethan's figure wasn't a mere misfortune of the dark, it was a lure. Panic surged anew, and she shouted in defiance, "I am not afraid of you." But the shadows threw doubt back at her. "Not afraid?" they whispered, their tone dripping with venomous amusement. "You should be." Suddenly, the floor jerked violently beneath her feet, pooling shadows rising up like tendrils, wrapping around her. The brightness flickered, taunting her with false promises as she fell to her knees, grappling with the darkness threatening to suffocate her. In that moment, she glimpsed a reflection. The wall bore a visage of her own face, warped in terror, eclipsed by the twisted shadow of her son. The shadows surged forward, a tsunami of despair crashing into her resolve. As Sarah fought for breath, the echoing laughter morphed into a sinister chant, weaving through the air like smoke. "Join us, join him." A sickening lurch. The basement trembled once more. And as the laughter reached a fever pitch, something snapped within her. She let the darkness envelop her, like a ravenous sea swallowing everything whole. But deep beneath it, a flicker of defiance ignited as she realized she wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for Ethan, and along with him, whatever horror lurked in the shadows. "Get away from him!" she roared, an ember of courage exploding into a blazing fire. The laughter faltered for a moment, uncertainty marring the once confident desolation. And in that brief silence, Sarah understood, the power to reclaim her truth and save her son lay just within her grasp, but would it be enough? As shadows loomed, the echoes of lost souls mixed with her own, promising revelations yet unsaid. She knew this was only the beginning. How far would she have to go to reclaim what was lost? Would the truth set her free, or plunge her deeper into the darkness? The darkness squeezed around Sarah's body, its grip tight and unyielding. She felt the pulsing pressure of the shadows around her, a visceral reminder of the threat that loomed. She focused on the flicker of light, its heartbeat steady in the chaos. "Ethan!" she cried again, her voice carrying a raw edge of desperation. But the shadows hissed back, intent on drowning her words. They whispered deceitfully sweet promises. "Stay, it's safe here, join us." No, she thought. She remembered Ethan's laughter, pure and untainted. That was the sound she needed to carry her forward. With a shuddering breath, Sarah summoned every ounce of willpower left within her. "I'm not your toy," she shouted. Her words echoed defiantly, cutting through the cacophony. Somehow, the shadows paused, swirling hesitantly, the room shivered, the light flickering ominously as a shape began to form before her. At first, it seemed ethereal, like mist twisting into a coherent figure. But as it solidified, horror crashed into her heart. It was a grotesque caricature of Ethan, a mockery of his innocence. The face grinned widely, eyes hollow, devoid of warmth. "Mommy," it droned, voice syrupy and distorted. "I've been waiting for you. Join me." The duplicity made bile rise in her throat. Panic flooded back. "No. You're not my son." In that moment, she recalled the warmth of his hugs, the sparkle in his eyes. This was not Ethan. This was the dark's twisted illusion, crafted to ensnare her. With every ounce of courage she could muster, Sarah began to reclaim her words. "You're a lie. You can't have him." Each syllable carved itself into the air, rupturing the malevolent energy. A howl exploded around her as the shadows recoiled, their laughter faltering. A deep rumble shook the foundation of the basement, echoing with rage. She saw cracks forming in the darkness, fissures of light beginning to seep through in response to her defiance. Sarah felt empowered for the first time since stepping into this abyss. "Ethan!" she bellowed, roaring into the shadows. "I will find you." Emerging from the cracks, she was met with something unbelievable. A shimmering door appeared, pulsing like a beacon. Freedom? Or another trick? But she'd take her chances. She dashed toward the door, propelled by hope and fear coursing through her veins. With each stride, the shadows writhed angrily, splintering and hissing around her. "No! You can't escape!" they screeched, their voices layering into a crescendo of madness. When she reached the door, it felt warm against her trembling hand. But as she turned the knob, hesitation gripped her heart. What lay behind it? Could it lead to safety, or to more torment? With a deep breath, she flung the door open, flooding the basement with light. It felt like stepping into another world, vibrant and alive. She dashed through, her heart pounding, praying to see Ethan's face instead of the mocking visage that had haunted her. But the moment she crossed the threshold, the light shifted. The basement's rattling shadows clawed at the edges of her mind, still whispering promises. "You can't leave him, you belong with us." Sarah stumbled forward, the overwhelming energy of the new realm trying to pull her back. She steadied herself, searching frantically. Where was he? "It's too dark." The voice, soft and small, echoed in the distance. She froze, the sound chilling her bones. It was Ethan. "Ethan!" she cried, pushing further into the brightness, ignoring the shadows that swirled at her ankles trying to tether her back. But the light flickered again, and the world twisted, flickers of darkness clashing with radiance. In that heart-stopping moment, she stood at the brink of two worlds, each pulling passionately for her. Would she escape? Or would the shadows reclaim her along with the truth she fought so hard to uncover? A chill of uncertainty gnawed at her, and as the basement trembled behind her, she knew she had only one path to walk. Yet, with every choice came consequences. How far would the cost of saving him reach? "Mom! Help!" The echo of his cry bounced against the walls of her mind, demanding her action. But which fate would she choose to embrace? Sarah felt the world bend and twist around her like a fractured dream, held hostage by shadows determined to cling to her. She stood at the brink, the shimmering door beckoning her with promises of freedom, while darkness roared behind her. "Ethan!" she shouted again, chasing the sound of his voice, willing the courage to pour through her. "I'm coming." Each word propelled her forward, despite the chilling whispers threading through her mind, voices taunting her, insisting she remain with them. But she had come too far to be ensnared again. The light glimmered just ahead, bursting with warmth, its pole a beacon against the encroaching shadows. Yet, the darkness flailed and writhed, a monstrous entity desperate to keep its grip on her. "You can't escape!" it screeched, voices merging into a cacophony of anger and desperation. "Join us! Join him!" "No!" Sarah cried, her voice laced with fierce determination. "You don't control me." The warmth of freedom felt stronger with every step she took toward the door. She reached for the vessel of hope, her hand trembling against the surface. It glowed in response, vibrant and alive. When she stepped through, she felt a powerful rush air as clear as crystal surged around her, invigorating her with every breath. The shadows hissed, retreating momentarily. She spun around, heart racing, desperate to see Ethan. But as the darkness retreated, it revealed a room a stark contrast to the curling shadows. White walls and a bed, simple and unchanged. But no Ethan. "Where are you, baby?" she whispered, panic taking root in her chest again. She stepped cautiously into the space, eyes darting to every corner, longing for a sign. "Ethan." But all that answered was silence. Then, she heard it, a faint echo, a giggle small, sweet, but it coiled around her like a snake. "In here, Mommy." The call came from a closet, dim-lit and half-closed. Her heart lurched. She rushed forward, flinging the door wide open. Inside lay a small pile of toys, but there at the very back, she could make out a shadow. "Ethan?" But as she stepped forward, the shape shifted, shifting into something grotesque, a reflection twisted by malice. "You shouldn't have come back," it said, mockingly in his sweet voice. Fear pricked at Sarah's skin, but she gritted her teeth. "You're not him. You cannot have my son." She hurled those words into the dark, and the air around her crackled as if answering her defiance. With a long inhale, she pushed through that wall of evil intent. "You'll never win. He's mine." And just as the laughter surged around her again, drowning out her cries, the toy truck she had seen earlier rolled out from the shadows, its bright colors a stark reminder of her son's innocence. "Ethan!" she shouted, lunging toward it, and at that moment, a familiar giggle chimed, mingling with the haunting spirit from her fears. The pile shifted again, and out tumbled her son, his face smeared with dirt but alive, his smile as bright as sunbeams breaking through clouds after a storm. "Mommy!" he cried, arms outstretched. Relief cascaded through her like a wild river bursting through a dam. She swept him into her embrace, heart racing with the exhilaration of his warmth. "Ethan! I thought I lost you." But even as they tangled in the thrill of reunion, the shadows began to swirl again, anger coalescing into a frantic movement around them. "You can't have him!" Sarah screamed against the chaos, clutching Ethan tighter. "Join us!" the chorus of shadows hissed, their voices echoing all around, attempting to penetrate the warmth of their embrace, but Sarah stood firm. "No!" She met the darkness with unwavering resolve. "You'll not take him. Not today." With a scream that rattled the air, she pushed toward the towering light at the doorway, the very essence of hope, and together, hand in hand with her son, they surged forward. The darkness screeched, clinging desperately, but just as they were engulfed, a blinding brilliance erupted, filling every gap within the shadows, illuminating their path and surrounding them with an ethereal glow. The darkness was pushed away. Shrieking in fury, as they burst through the door, escaping its clutches. Sarah gasped as fresh, crisp air filled her lungs. The horrible weight lifted, and she stumbled, pulling Ethan close. They were outside, rain still falling but dulled now, silver drops shimmering like diamonds against the moonlight. "Screaming is over," she murmured with a sigh of relief, holding him against her. "I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay with you," he whispered, eyes wide with innocence, yet they held a maturity that sent fresh ripples of sorrow through her heart. "I know, my love," she said, her voice trembling. "And it's over now." As dawn broke, colors slashed across the sky in hues of warmth, chasing away the night's terror. They stood together, embracing against the chill, and as the first rays of sun crested over the horizon, a wave of tranquility washed over Millfield. The shadows that had haunted their home slunk back into the depths of memory, leaving behind only the echo of hope. "Never again," Sarah vowed softly, looking down at her son, who beamed back at her like a ray of sunshine. They turned to face the new day together, ready to face whatever lay ahead. This time, they felt ready, and just like that, with a final breath of relief, Sarah knew that they, simply by forging through their darkness, had reclaimed their lives. Before you close this chapter, you need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. I want to see the comments flooded with your reactions and theories about the ending. Let us hear what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.